Oh, are we live? Yeah, we're live on a Thursday. Back to Thursday.
Back to Thursday.
What's up, guys?
What's going
What's
on?
Welcome to GenXYZ. Back to our normal time slot for the first time in a couple weeks. It's
4
good to be here.
o'clock.
Yeah, it's good to be here.
Feels
to be
good.
back.
So, Ashley, you're not even in Florida. Where are you? You're in New Jersey. You're somewhere else. What are you doing? Traveling the world?
So
Living the Gen Z
thankfully,
life.
living the Gen Z life. Thankfully, because I work from home,
Digital
I
nomad.
get to, I'm a digital nomad. I get to travel back to where I grew up, get to stay with my sister because she has a lot of things going on, like her graduation, um, her bridal shower. And instead of flying back and forth, I get to stay here the whole week and work and get paid. So,
How great is that? The life of a Gen Zer, you get to be a digital nomad, you work wherever you want, and I love it. I think it's great. Someone asked me today, last night, I haven't responded yet, on one of our social media accounts, one of mine. They said, what do you think about Gen Z in the workplace? And so I need to answer that today for them. But I like Gen
yeah.
Z. Peter, so here's my thought after thinking about this, right? My generation, Gen X, we were taught like life is hard, right? Like life is hard, but you have opportunity. Millennials were taught to be entitled, right? And that life should be easy for you, kind of protected.
You were taught that?
Hold on. So I was taught life is hard, but you're not entitled to anything, but opportunity abounds, right?
Uh-huh.
You guys were kind of taught that, raised to be entitled for whatever reason. This is my take on it, right? This is obviously a gross generalization, but Gen Z is sort of a mix of the two, right? Gen Z has seen how hard life can be, clearly, right? Has experienced it at a young age and is pessimistic about their prospects, but willing to do something about it in a more that's like has a lot of Gen X traits to it. So that's my take. So I like Gen Z a lot collectively because you guys are tougher than millennials.
I think that, millennials were raised that there was lots of opportunities and that like we could do everything, which almost like in my personal experience, the ones I've seen, it's like analysis paralysis, where it's like you can do 10 different things, but you got to pick one. And then everybody's kind of like, oh, but I want to do this, but I want to do that. And then when they actually get out there, they realize like not everybody can be the astronaut doctor, and it's a lot of hard work and, whatever. And while that's internal, there's also, the external, like a lot of things can go wrong in the world that you have no control over. You have to accept it. I think Gen Z has benefited a little bit because they're like, they've seen that and they're like, okay, I can internalize some of the actual like realness of the world and deal with it in a more pragmatic way. Maybe not have those rose-colored glasses going into the world. So I guess I kind of agree with you.
I can still see how I feel like it's the opposite. I feel like Gen Z has it easy and millennials had it harder than us just because they got into like the whole technology world first, testing those waters before we did, trying to figure everything out. They didn't have AI. They had to learn how to use like a computer, how to use it in
You
school
guys just
and
grew up
everything.
with it, so you're like used to it. You're like,
We grew up with
I
it.
don't know, boys. This is all I've ever
And
known.
now it's like we have AI helping us. I feel like maybe millennials, when they were first getting into the workforce, they didn't have as many like tools and resources helping them. And I feel like Gen Z, there's a lot coming out where it's like, okay, this is how you create a LinkedIn profile. You can sign up for job alerts. I don't think millennials had that in the past.
But AI, I would argue, if we're talking job search in particular, I know you meant it in a more broad way, but with the job search in particular, AI is making it extremely difficult for Gen Z. I mean, I think it kind of destroyed the application and hiring process that it worked much better just a few years ago.
I mean, that's kind of everything though. That's not even just AI, like just the job. That's everything being automated to the point where like I had to do something the other day and I was like trying to call and I was like, can I talk to someone? And all the company had was they had AI, everything, this and that. And all they had was like a chat support, which I had to jump through multiple hoops to get finally to a person. And it's like, can you try and use a bot first? And I'm just like, I literally typed in no.
That's everywhere. Everything you like I tried calling my insurance company. They had me talking to an AI bot first. I tried calling United Airlines. They had me talking to an AI bot first. And I'm like, no, give me an actual human being
Well, Gen Z
because
too, like you know how like you guys grew up, so you're like, I know the limitations of AI. You're like, if I wanted to use a bot, I would use a bot. The entire reason I'm reaching out is because a bot hasn't been able to solve this. So it annoys me when it like patronizes you. It's like, try to use the bot. I'm like, I did. This is my second step. This is not my first step. Like I'm trying to. So I feel like that's kind
yeah,
of a
frustrating.
ubiquitous thing with Gen Z. They're like,
I love that the emotions start to come out. I mean, that is such the millennial in you that you're getting emotional about a computer interaction. I love it.
Yeah, I guess I just have more feelings in the world. My predominant emotion on this show is like incredulousness and like anger towards like. So actually, that's more of an old man thing, I feel like, than like a millennial thing. It's just like I'm annoyed at like kids these days and like how things are these days.
You
Kids
guys are
these
moving
days.
into the kids these days get off my lawn
Yeah.
category.
So
as
is it a millennial
generation.
thing or is it just an age thing? It's like people in their 20s are like very like, oh, they're rosy and we're gonna beat, and then people
I
like as they
think
get older, we're just becoming crankier.
I think it's an age thing because I mean, now that I'm kind of slowly progressing through my 20s and I look at all these college kids or people much younger than me, I'm like, "Ah, kids these days," or "What are they
So
doing?"
now you're there, even though you're the
Now
kid
I'm
in my
there.
for
You're like
Which is
5 years younger
weird.
than her, and she's like, kids these days.
It's just because even though we're 5 years apart, there's still a huge difference, like, it's nuts.
It's
I don't
oh
know.
yeah.
technology. Everything's advancing faster. So the difference between someone in high school and somebody who's in their mid-20s is like way bigger than probably
Yeah,
it was maybe, I
and,
don't know,
like,
5 years ago.
the trends in the language, like, even though I'm a Gen Zer, I never say no cap, I never say period, but I notice that the Gen Zers that are much younger than me, that's, like, all the language that they use, and I'm like, "Please, like, don't talk like that to me."
Okay, so I'm glad you brought that up. Yesterday in our Slack channel, I said, "Yo, peeps," and I
No
was sending a very casual message, obviously, just saying it tongue in cheek. And the first response from I don't know how old, I guess from someone who's probably what late 20s, so he's probably borderline, probably
Mhm.
late Gen Z. I guess he was or early Gen Z. Said, "What is this 1980?" And I'm like, "Oh."
What?
First of all, peeps is
I
like
feel like
I
peeps
say
is
that, and
hip,
that's like a 90s. That's like a late
Okay, maybe
90s.
he said 90s. I don't know what he said, but he
but it's
basically
still
was implying that I am out of the loop for
Well,
saying that.
I guess I'm out of loop because I still say like dude.
What do you
Dude,
think,
dude
Ashley?
is
Can I
from
get
the
away
80s,
like
but
yo
people still
peeps?
say
Is
that.
does that make me put me in
I
old
s
man status?
no, I feel like that's carried on, like, even if it originated in the '90s, I feel like it's still happening in
Things are timeless.
2024. I say
All
like,
right.
"Hey, peeps," I'm entering the chat saying, "Hey, peeps,"
All
or
right,
"Hey,
I'm justified. That makes me feel
That's an
better.
AOL holdover. Although, as a side note, I saw an article and it was like some Gen Z was like it was a Gen Zer. They had consulting for companies, and I should have sent it to you guys. They were basically showing how to like use updated language for Gen Z. And I like skimmed the article, and the thing that stood out is they were saying like vibes makes you sound old, like saying vibe, like something has a good vibe. I was like, I feel like that's a Gen Z term. They're like, no, it's like moved on beyond that. I'm like, I
Like
can't.
when I hear
vibe."
vibe, honestly,
Yeah,
like
like
that
good
phrase
vibe.
evolved, but I feel like it originated like Beach Boys kind of thing.
Yeah,
Like vibes, like
I'm
groovy
giving
energy.
off good vibrations.
Yeah,
Good vibes.
exactly.
I
But
feel
then it
like I say
became
that.
like, wasn't it like when you guys use the word mood a lot, like
Yeah,
vibes, mood, like Friday mood,
yeah, it's like the aesthetic. You just got vibe. The vibes are good. I don't know.
feels. That's another
Work
one.
vibes.
Feels.
I got angry reading the article though because it was like literally like some 21-year-old and was like, I run a consulting to like help businesses relate to Gen Zers. It was I think it was on Reddit, and then all the comments were like, I'm Gen Z and I still say vibes.
There's someone on one of the social channels that calls himself the Gen Z Whisperer. I'm like, oh, come on.
Gen Z
What do you,
whisperer.
I'm a fan of Gen Z in the workplace in particular because I think you guys are tougher. I struggled with millennials and their emotions it was that when that started coming into the office, I'm like, what are we doing? Like, leave that at home. I'm not equipped.
I know tons of Gen Z that have lots of emotions.
But
nothing makes me sound older than in like old guy status than when we start talking about emotions. I just can't.
Gen Z, I feel like, okay, so we don't show like the type of emotion where they're like, "Wah," like, I have to stay an hour late." I feel like we're the only emotion we really show is like anger, and I guess we're also impatient. So if nothing's going our way, we're kind of just like, all right, we're not going to do this anymore. We're going to
There
do
is a
something
lot of
else.
anger, but
Yeah.
I think you're justified in having that anger. You've kind of had a bad deal. And now the other thing about Gen Z that I find interesting, I was thinking about this the other day, watching something on the news, and here we are, like watching our country split in two, and watching adults behave like morons, treat each other poorly, longtime friendships, families break up over politics, and in how we have this election that we're coming into. And let's be honest, when you see the candidates, it's not like it gives you a whole lot of confidence in generations ahead of you and say this is the best we could do. And so you guys have seen the results of all of this, and you're seeing what's happening going forward. Yeah, you should be pissed. We've let you down.
I mean, you look at, you see people on the news like baby boomers who are the oldest, who should be like the most wise, and they're like acting like children. So yeah, why Gen Zers be like, well, this is just what it's like forever. Like you never like grow up at any point, and people are like, when am I going to start acting like an adult?
but when I was actually your age, and for sure, when I was coming out of college, I know you've been out for a while, but I had so much. I had inherent respect for people who were older, right? That you respect your elders. That's what you're taught, and there was reason to because they were impressive. They had accomplished things. They carried themselves well. They acted in a manner that I wanted to be like. I wanted to emulate that. And now it's like, respect your elders. Your elders are lunatics who are embarrassing to see, and that's a weird place to be, because who are you supposed to emulate if not those who are at the top of the food chain, so to speak?
Yeah.
I don't know. That's rhetorical, I guess.
I mean, I wonder if it's like the internet, just like maybe people have always kind of but older generations maybe not dealing with it as well. Yeah, I agree. And I've seen that said multiple times, people being like, all right, well, respect your elders worked when they acted respectable or worth be respecting. And now it's to the point where it's like, I'm not going to respect you just by nature of you like having lived a long time. Like you should actually like behave in a way that deserves it.
I feel like those were one and the same in the past, right? And now it's almost like guilty until proven innocent, not the other way around.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's kind of a common sentiment. So, especially with Gen Zers and probably millennials too, as well.
Millennials too.
Hey guys, I just realized we didn't kick off the show. We didn't introduce ourselves.
Your favorite thing. We're just talking.
I think everyone knows I'm the Gen Z.
I'm the Gen Z.
And how we talk. From how we were talking in the beginning.
I think that's safe. All right. So today, one of the things that we wanted to talk about was Quit Talk. Ashley, do we have a TikTok update? Do we know that TikTok is going to be around? Is it going away? I don't think so, but have you heard?
I hear about it 1 second and then I stop hearing about it. I stop seeing videos. So I don't
sell it to an American shell corporation. That's how it's going to end up going.
Yeah, I don't know. Hopefully Elon Musk grabs it. But
Quit Talk. I'm not talk to an old millennial who refuses to be on TikTok. What is Quit Talk?
So Quit Talk is basically a community of TikTokers, probably in Gen Zers, that are making videos of them like either quitting work or talking about how they quit work or why, and kind of just like hyping everyone up and trying to get everyone quit if they're working 9 to 5 and not getting paid reasonably, if they're in like a toxic work environment, if they're not getting paid time off, like just it's a big thing where it's multitude of reasons
Going
of
out in flames, like
going out in flames,
publicly, to make your
exposing their company and other employees or
So
boss or
that's what it's
manager.
meant to do, is like expose, and like it's supposed to be like the good part of
Expose
like being in
and
a union, like where you're like all solidarity and that type of thing. Is that like what
it's
it's
like
aiming
a
for?
form of like riot, like down with the
like us
bosses
against
and
them,
the
like we're fighting the evil empire sort of thing.
yeah. So like it's like a riot. They're trying to get everyone to
So
join the community quit talk.
So we've talked.
So
It's been a few months. We talked about the young sales professional who recorded herself getting laid off,
Mhm.
and then put a message out about that. Had a lot of support. Now I will say, I don't know if we talked about this. The last message I saw from her was saying that she's had a really hard time emotionally since then. So I thought that was interesting. But what do you think about that? I mean, I would tell you, terrible idea. It will follow you. We know that the internet never forgets. If it's once you record it, it lives forever. So, do you think there's any justification for doing that? I mean, is there any time you'd look at someone going out like that and try and talking about their former employer in a bad light? It just seems like I would always advise against doing that.
Yeah, I mean, I'd always been taught like basically like even if you hate it, like suck it up and try to like just leave and be like, all right, because you can quit and that's fine, that's great, and that's what you should do. But like being like theatrical about it is like all that it's gonna do is going to like hurt you. Like there's no like real net positive to it. So like being stoic in that and just like sucking up your feelings and just quitting. You know, you can write your one-line resignation. It doesn't have to be friendly. You can be, but like you shouldn't. I'd always been taught that you shouldn't burn bridges unnecessarily. Not saying that like people don't do it and emotions don't get the better of them, but like it shouldn't be the goal. I guess
Gen Z doesn't care. They'll burn the bridge. They just in
that's
their
what
head
I'm saying.
think
You
that
guys
they'll
are
find
young.
something else.
You guys are young, so you're like, I don't care. I'm gonna burn the bridge, but like, I don't know. What does it come back to bite you in like 10 years? And
Yep.
that's, I guess, I'm more of a pragmatic person, so I can't see the benefit in it.
And what they don't notice is the fact that, okay, if you're going to apply for another job and they see this video, they're not going to hire you because they're going to be like, okay, if they're quitting, they're going to talk about us. So
Dude,
it is going to
that was like the
affect
millennial
you.
thing. Like, if you put it online, it's there forever. Like, don't put anything online that you wouldn't want, you know, your boss or whoever's seeing. And now we're like living in the world where people just film their entire lives all the time, and privacy is not a
Yeah.
thing anymore.
Well,
But again,
the young lady who quit or was getting laid off from the sales job, she received so many likes and shares and positive messages on social media. But that's like when I was
Can I take
watching
those
this
to the bank? Can I take those likes to?
No, it's the point. Like it's like going, hey, if there's a kid who stands up in class and embarrasses a teacher,
Real popular.
his classmates are gonna like it and egg him on to do it, but they're not the ones doing it, right? They're letting someone else take the fall for it, and that's a bad idea. You don't want to be that person. And then to your point, Peter, like they're not the ones that matter in this equation, right?
Yeah.
Like the teacher is the one that matters, or in this circumstance, your prospective and next prospective employer is who's going to matter.
Yeah, I mean, if
Not
you're
your peer
really
group.
good at your job and your boss, say you're in a scenario and you're totally justified, you're really good at your job, you're doing stuff, you're underappreciated, your boss sucks, but they hate you for whatever reason. You quitting, you can do it honestly, like killing them with kindness, and like their workload's going to back up and stuff, and that's going to hurt them way more than you throwing a temper tantrum and leaving. That's kind of how
I agree. I agree. So is it ever? So do we agree then that there's never any justification?
Unless there's like, I guess it's like a whistleblower type situation, like it's genuinely unsafe, or like it's like maybe that's justified. But I think a lot of the times it's just personal feelings, and so that's.
Bello agrees. No reason to ever do it. So if anyone does have a reason to do it, if you've heard of one, I'd love to know.
Yeah, I'd like to see. I mean, a general like actual reason that I agree with. I'm sure there are circumstances that definitely suck for the people and they want it, but it's it just seems like it's a trend and people are jumping on the bandwagon, and it's like they're doing it for internet, popularity, which is
You
great.
know,
And all, but like you said, that's the class clown, like getting themselves in trouble. And when they're sitting in the principal's office, their classmates aren't with them.
Right.
Like,
Right.
I
Yeah, like
almost
it's but sorry, Ashley, go ahead. Go ahead.
sorry, I almost compare it to, and I don't know when this happened, but I remember one of my teachers were talking about this from high school because she actually participated in this. But when there was like that big teacher protest,
mhm.
because they weren't getting like paid, or it was something. I forget what the story was exactly, but all the teachers like gathered in protest, and
Yeah.
those that got protested, or some of them got arrested for protesting, or they got fired. I almost think of that as like if there was TikTok back then, like that would have been a huge quit talk experience. Like, and I feel like that was justified. I feel
Yeah,
like
I guess
them
I struggle with that.
protesting.
Like, if it's something real, like, I mean, yeah, I know what you're talking about, and they were
Mhm.
like, genuinely like underpaid, and they're like, all right, well, no, we've asked for help time and time again, and this is the only thing, So maybe maybe we're not looking at quit talk as like I guess it's a social, like, outrage or something like that. I just think personally, you're not you're sacrificing a part of your career. It's genuinely not going to look good if you do it in a public way like that. Even if
Okay, so
people
here's the potential other side of that coin. The Catch Me Outside girl from Dr. Phil, however many years ago.
Aw,
yeah,
just
Remember
had a
her?
baby. She
yeah,
had a baby.
So I don't know this to be definitively true, what I'm about to say, but my kids were telling me, we all laughed about it when it happened. Like, what a moron, right? The whole world was laughing at her and like embarrassed for the whole thing. But as I understand it, she's made millions of dollars as a result of this, will never have to work as a result, is famous with income behind it. So Peter, you said you can't take the likes to the bank. She's taking the likes and
yeah.
shares to the bank. I
Taking
mean,
it
so
to
you
the bank.
go, well, okay, does everyone think they're going to be the next Catch Me Outside girl? Not that that's what you should aspire to be,
It's
but
yeah, no,
people are
that is
laughing.
a completely valid thing. I mean, that's how many reality TV stars exist that are rich and literally all they do is like be annoying, like on TV. So, and they're
Well,
rich.
that's
So
what I'm starting to take. Like, I know I was on board before with the whole influencer thing, but like, there's this one influencer that I think money got to in her head, and she, like, threw an extravagant birthday for her 7-year-old where there was, like, it was insane, and she got so much hate in the comments saying this is unrealistic, and just, like, putting hate on the influencer community, like, "How are they making this much money? Why would you give your 7-year-old such a big" it was almost like a wedding. So, I don't know, sometimes I'm just
yeah,
like,
but those are people commenting, which is literally that strategy for influencers
we're
is like
feeding
raise.
into she lost followers, though, I
Did she
mean,
actually? Was there a net loss? Okay,
I unfollowed. She
you did,
lost like
okay? Because there's a couple accounts that I absolutely they
mhm,
infuriate me that they're doing as well as they are. That there's a couple that give career advice it's atrocious. There's a couple. There's two accounts in particular that have huge followings, and all they do is repost other
it's
original
insane.
content. But I follow them, and I'm like, why? I'm supporting this, and it gets me mad. And
Yeah.
here I am helping them. It's crazy.
Like, why am I supporting this extravagant, like, this isn't influencing anyone in my like, this no one no one can afford to throw a, like, wedding-sized birthday party for their 7-year-old. Like, everyone had, like, confetti birthday cakes in their garage when I was growing up, and that was the most amazing thing, and you would
Isn't
get
it
a
like
hike.
pretty well established that like social media is like bad for your brain and like expectations
Yeah,
like
they're
that?
giving you false
Especially young girls I know like are like especially susceptible to it.
false expectations, and then it makes you think something different for your career, like, "Am I doing the right thing right now?" And then even though you like doing it, you're still unhappy doing it because you're not making enough money, because now you want this lavish life that everyone keeps promoting on social media, and it just messes with everyone's
Yeah,
head.
I'm listening to an audiobook right now called The Anxious Generation. And it's about Gen Z, my kids' age. And It was by an author who wrote a book called The Coddling of the American Mind. And it's hard for me to listen to because the things that we've let kids do with cell phones and be on social media, I've allowed with my kids. And we've talked about this already, but it's the statistics are awful. And it's really terrifying to see where this is, what we've done to that generation unknowingly. I hope that the next generation of parents learns from this and improves. But once again, we haven't done you guys a disservice, in this case, unintentionally.
6th grade for the cell phone, I'm telling you.
8th grade.
8th grade.
8th grade.
I mean, you got it on all the social medias. You got it on LinkedIn. I meant to send you guys. There was a post about a guy. It was a Mother's Day post on it was the LinkedIn lunatics, obviously. And there was a guy posting. Basically, he was trying to, like, I guess, say that this girl who was a salesperson for him worked really hard, and he was trying to, like, call her out as, like, being great by, like, and, like, shaming other people. But he said she had given birth like less than a few days before, and then it was Mother's Day, and she had, like, gone into a client meeting because, like, they needed so much help. And he was like, he's basically just going like, this woman had given birth several days before, and it was Mother's Day, and she was still in here helping. And that's the type of grit that I like to see. And people are like, dude, what? like that's, and then there's tons and tons and tons of comments on it. By the way, a lot of them are angry, but still sharing it still. Like, so we're talking about it. So clearly, I mean, these kinds of things where I don't even know if this is an actual story or not, or if this guy posted it just knowing that people would be angry about, like, this kind of, like, work culture.
You know what I just thought of? So we always, I guess, when we are looking for a job, and we have to be so careful with our social media, just in case, our future employer looks at it. But do they look at, like, family members or spouses, and does that impact anything? Like, I know at least for, like, a cop, I know if you're, like, a cop's significant other, sometimes you have to be careful with what you post on social media. So I'm always thinking, like, if I'm looking for a job and my significant other is, like, posting, like, drinking or partying,
I think if it comes up,
me?
if you're getting tagged in those posts and an internet search of you comes up, then sure. I mean, that could happen. I don't think anyone goes out of the way. I mean, certainly there's unique circumstances. Maybe if you're applying for a DoD job that has certain clearances and they have to investigate your family at a different level, I'm sure that happens. But generally, in a corporate job, I've never heard of anyone worrying about what someone's spouse is posting. That seems a little.
I think unless it's, like, directly related to, like, your career, and they're like, oh, well, that's, they're a very outspoken type person. The only thing I can think of is, like, there was some guy a while back who was, like, posting photos of trophy hunting with his things, and, like, his his daughter or something, when they're, like, got found by, like, the internet mob, and, like, they were like, oh, you're guilty by association type of thing.
They went. There was a lion, wasn't it? Like, it was a picture, like they were posing with a lion they'd shot in some safari.
Yeah, it was, like, in Africa. But that wasn't related, obviously, to their job. But I think it was. I think the student was at a college, and it was something to do with, like, people were, like, tagging the school and being like, hey, what are you going to do about this? This is one of your students, type of thing. Even though it wasn't actually her, it was her dad. So
this is the dentist story.
Yeah,
I remember that. Yeah,
that was a while ago.
I didn't know.
So I guess it's got to hit a certain, like, level of, like, critical mass for it to matter. But probably for, like, everyday stuff, they don't. I mean, I wouldn't think it's not.
Well, when you stop and think about it, how many obscure posts exist that people put out there that did not go viral, that would get them in trouble for if they did. I mean, and of course we talk about this a lot, think about it a lot, how to get visibility on posts, which is usually what we're trying to do. But I think there's probably at times, I mean, that's one thing with Reddit or Twitter, if the right person sees what you post with a big following and they decide to retweet it or screenshot it, whatever, that could be bad news quickly.
It's going to be a thing. It's already a thing. It's going to be a bigger thing in the future with, like, stuff you posted coming back to haunt you. Like, I can just see, like, these, like, when the first Gen Zer is, like, running for president, stuff they posted on TikTok 20 years prior is going to come back. If I'm famous in the future, someone's going to find one of these videos.
Okay, but really, does it really come back? I mean, let's just say our current president has a few things on that he knew was being recorded, saying that somehow the world is ignored and acted like it didn't happen. And yet you see an NFL quarterback or college quarterback have a post from when they were 15 and he gets hate, so it's like, I feel like those things are very selective.
Well, yeah. I think that, but I think it'll come out. Whether people care about it or not is a different issue. So,
but it's interesting that you would say running for president when quite literally the president has gone is on record saying atrocious things.
Both presidential candidates have a lot of stuff online I guess it depends on what side you're for that people care about it, but it'll be to another level because you think about the stuff, the level of privacy that exists for Gen Z now, with TikTok and stuff. I can't wait till you see the people who are streaming their entire life. It's one thing to have a post or a post, but when they've got literally hours and hours and hours of actual video of them just talking or whatever, and when they're going to be 50, 60 years old, that's going to come back. It's more evidence, I guess, against people or for people or whatever.
I think of like current fashion right now. So my number 3 child is a high school senior, and the current fashion is their hair looks like a mushroom, like the boys. If you line up 10 high school boys right now, half of them, their hair is going to look like a mushroom. And
full haircuts come back.
And I'm seeing these senior grad pictures, 20 years from now, you're gonna question your judgment.
It's nowadays a flock of seagull hair. It's the modern generation.
Oh, wow.
It is. I guess, but I guess you just look back and laugh. Just like when you look at 60s pictures or some of the things that we did. We all shaved our heads to look like Brian Bosworth when I was a senior in high school. Ashley, do you know who that is? Does that name ring a bell?
No, I'm gonna Google him.
He was this guy who was the best college football player at the time, and he had shaved head, basically a mohawk with stripes, and we thought that was cool.
I remember there was a trend in my high school. I don't know if high schoolers still do this, where if it's either football players or wrestlers, they all bleach their hair.
There you go.
Have you heard of that?
The 90s is back. People are wearing Jinko jeans again. That's a thing. And I'm I remember that was a thing when I was a kid. Mm-hmm. So maybe the mushroom will go away. It'll be cringy for a little bit. And which, by the way, the term cringy doesn't work anymore. It's old. And then it'll come back. So when the Gen Zers are parents, their kids are going to have mushroom hair, and they're going to be hey man, it's cool to be retro with my mushroom retro haircut. Retro mushroom.
Oh man, Bella agrees. Her brother is also in the mushroom hair crowd. Well, he's in good company. We know that he feels part of the group. Okay, so Gen Z, Ashley, I spent the beginning of this show talking about how much I love Gen Z. However, you guys are getting some heat from this article in Business Wire, and I'll assume Business Wire is legit. I don't know I'm not too familiar with it, but it's owned by Berkshire Hathaway, so we'll grant them legitimacy. That says 22% of Gen Z respondents in the survey said they engaged in unethical conduct in the past year in the workplace. What? 22%? Okay, I want to make sure I get it right.
Define what
engaged in unethical conduct.
Does it define what unethical means?
What's is that I don't know. What's unethical conduct?
It could be, stealing, or it could be I don't know, having an affair.
Well, how about having 2 jobs? Right?
Having 2 jobs is a big one.
So here we go. Here's a list: harassment, discrimination, conflict of interest, employee health and safety violations. That's some of the things on the list. So
harassment.
Who's
Gen Zers?
First of all, who's agreeing to who's fessing up to that? Yes, I've harassed, I've discriminated. I'm what? Why would you? That's so the fact so that's 22% who's acknowledging that they've done it. So double it. Let's just say, right? Like half people aren't going to admit it. What is that's shocking.
I guess it's like people, you're not going to like everybody. So maybe just acting, like, I mean, being
But
mean.
it is like,
is that harassment, being mean to somebody you don't like? Because that's like a human
dating
emotion.
another coworker, that's not a part of the conduct.
Well, I mean,
I guess it's whatever you decide is like unethical. Like if you're like, that's not unethical, then I'm like, I didn't engage in any unethical because it's fine for me to do this.
Maybe
Although I like the health and safety one, because like having worked in a warehouse, like people take like OSHA violations. It's like a meme, like all the time, like just doing things that are unsafe because it's like quicker. They're like, oh, I should get a ladder, but instead I'm just going to stand on a bunch of pallets because they're here.
Oh,
like,
I mean, if
that's included in it.
That's true. If they give you a list of 10 things, right, and 90% of the participants pick safety, health and safety violations, but then you include it in it's kind of like going, Elon Musk and I, between the two of us, we're the richest, we make up the richest person in the world, right? Like, okay, that's a bit of a stretch to and it's probably some clickbait in this magazine or this article.
Some OSHA violation that, could be health and safety and that we could be breaking is, and I feel like many people are probably breaking this.
I don't really see that as ethical, though. Like that's an actual, like if you can actually get injured or it's actually bad for you. Like
no, I mean, like if someone can't eat on the premise, but yet they still bring food and eat on the premise, even though like the OSHA says like, okay, you can't bring food in here. It's a safety and health hazard, but everyone's still bringing food. I feel like everyone has broken that.
Okay. So this is a couple bullets from the report. A large majority, 79% of employees who observed misconduct reported their observation, with most raising concerns either their direct manager or another manager in the company. So everyone's snitching on the people. Is that like no one would do that if you were bringing food. I assume that has to be a more serious violation.
Maybe they want to snitch so they get the person fired and they can get promoted.
All right, so Peter, that's the question. Let's talk about that for a second. So I think it's unethical to have two jobs. If you have a second job, you're working remotely. Okay. Peter, we talked about this. You've had a week to think about it. The last week you took the stance that, hey, that's not my responsibility to out someone for that. Yeah. Do you stand on that?
Yeah. So like in this scenario, we talked about if I'm their manager or not. So if it's a coworker and I'm like, if I'm a coworker, the realistic thing is it depends on how much they help out the rest of the team and how much goodwill they engender.
How much you like them is going to be the factor.
That's what I was going to say when you said it said discrimination in there. Like, does that include favoritism? Because people can pretend that that's not a thing in the world, but it is. People work with people that they like, or they, where there's leeway. If they're like, I can give this project to this person or this person, and this person's a lot nicer to me, and this person's mean, I'm going to go with the person who's nicer to me.
So now so your ethics come even further into question, because now you're saying you would apply your any belief you have selectively. So if you like me, you won't report me. But if you don't like me,
well, it depends, I guess. Like anything, there's shades of gray. The degree of how much it hurts. If it's not hurting anybody and the team is getting it done, which is what I was taught, then I'm probably not going to initially like do anything. If it's a net neutral for the team, like I'm not going to do it just because I'm like, oh, that's unethical. That's like, that's bad just because it's bad. It's not actually hurting anyone. So, that's where I'm going to say, yeah, I think that the people, let sleeping dogs lie if it's benefiting the rest of the team.
Ashley, where do you land with this?
I don't know. I think I agree with Peter.
I mean, in this scenario, like I would think a lot of we just talked about quick talk. Gen Z, they're going to say ethics have nothing to do. Like, you don't owe a company anything. So it's not ethical for me to like, I'm looking out for the company. The company doesn't care about you and will lay you off among 1,000 other people just because they lost a percentage in profit. So why is it ethical for me to care about them? That's what
Yeah.
That's going to be the predominant viewpoint, I think, with this article and with Gen Z, I guess.
Okay, so here's an interesting, the
I'm
second bullet. Of all the ethical culture measures, psychological safety was the greatest predictor of whether employees would report misconduct they had observed. Psychological safety, not physical safety, but psychological safety.
Psychological.
So fear from retaliation, I think, is what that means. Like, they'll report it if they feel like it's going to actually be something's done with it and it's not going to come back on them. So like people will snitch if it's actually not going to hurt them or come back to them.
Oh yeah. So if it's anonymous,
executive and senior leaders are 2.6 times more likely to indicate their company has a strong ethical culture than individual contributors and frontline employees, illustrating a stark leadership disconnect with the realities on the ground. I think that's probably not surprising.
I feel like that's common probably everywhere. The people that are doing better at the company have a better perception of the company than, and also there's numbers. If there's 100 of the frontline workers and 50 managers, there's a better chance that there's going to be disgruntled employees with the larger number. So that's not surprising to me at all.
It's like when you go on Glass. Oh, sorry.
Well, just for years, when I was selling technology solutions a long time ago, there was just always a high percentage of the staff and frontline managers who always would have disparaging things to say about like the IT leadership within the organization. Like, they don't know what they're talking about. And I would always think, sure they do. They're the one in charge. I mean, they rose to that position. Like, they had to have known what they were talking about to get there. They don't just appear at the top. But it was not an occasional thing. I mean, it was very, very common. And I've thought about that so many times over the years. And now that I'm in a leadership position where I go, well, how can you really do anything about that? Right. I mean, it was just because it's so common.
I feel like a common thing also is like, I mean, if you're not the one that actually has to make decisions, it's easy to be like armchair quarterback and be like, I would have done this. You're like, okay, well, you weren't in the situation with the limited, information at the time. So what do I think that there's some people probably at companies that are high up that are incompetent? Absolutely. Do I think that they've maybe gotten there because of favoritism or because they're well liked, but they're not actually technically good? That we know that's a fact, that that's a common thing. But I do think that, yeah, generally, like, if they're the one, making the rules, obviously they probably know about the rules. Like, so I think it's just, complaining about your boss, is probably a universal thing in a lot of, at all companies. So
I think so. I don't think the stat is surprising.
I mean, I feel like Glassdoor is kind of a good example too. I feel like the employees that are complaining on Glassdoor, they're probably not like big fans of their boss, and maybe their boss, like, maybe they're not good performers and their boss just hasn't been nice to them or something. So they're hating through Glassdoor, versus the good ones are good performers. They've gotten promoted. They have a good relationship with their boss. They're going to say good things.
Of course. I mean, that's a great way to sum it up. I mean, would Glassdoor exist if it wasn't anonymous? No. Like, if you had to put your name. So that's why I always have issue with Glassdoor, is that it's one-sided. You cannot win a one-sided fight. And what's weird about Glassdoor is that they make their money by selling advertising to the employers, but they exist to put employers at a disadvantage.
Did I tell you guys? I think I told you guys this story once, what I did on Glassdoor, because I was curious to see something and I was scared. I didn't know that it was like all anonymous. So I created like a fake profile because I was scared that people were going to see my name. But I didn't leave like a comment or anything. I was just curious
that you looked at the website.
Yeah, I don't know, because
they knew. They tracked
so
you.
I just created this whole fake profile. I was like, yeah, I work at like McDonald's.
You'd never be able to leave an anonymous comment on there because you'd be like, they're going to somehow track me. I think it's if you get a really happy worker and you really disgruntled worker, which one is more likely to leave a review? The happy worker is not going to go out of their way to do it unless you probably ask them to. They're not just going to do it just because, unless I guess you were constant.
It's like a happy customer. It's like when you're serving someone at a restaurant and you're like, can you leave like a good review if you had a good experience? People are lazy. They're not going to do that. But if they had a bad experience, they're going to run and leave that review.
Yeah, the status quo is like if it's like generally positive, like all right, great, I'm happy. I don't have to do extra, which is leaving a review as extra. Like there's got to be a motivator for them, and just hating something is a good enough motivator for most people.
I mean, it's such a strange time that we're in when you think about it. So back to social media posts that we talked about a little while ago. How to gain popularity on social media, all the channels that I know of, Twitter, TikTok, Instagram, Facebook, is engagement.
Mm-hmm.
There's no engagement when everyone is agreeing with each other. Yeah. There's none, right? And so the only way you're going to get any kind of popularity is to create controversy. I mean, that seems so inherently wrong, doesn't it?
I don't think that discussion and having different ideas is fine and actually good. But the problem is most people lack the ability to separate like thinking critically from like their emotions. And so it quickly devolves. I mean, anything online, it's like that's the universal truth. It's going to devolve into like name calling at a certain point because people are unable to separate their views from like who they are, especially if they're like really like strongly held views. So yeah, I think it's either everybody's like, great job, and then it's a really boring conversation, or everybody's like fighting in the comments, or, and then
I think people also like having a side to choose. Yeah. Because then it's like, I'll look at videos on TikTok or live streams, and it's these two people just like going against each other. And then there's comments, and commenters are going against each other. They just like having
it's in human nature to fight and be competitive. So it's not surprising that people are like, this is boring, everybody's getting along. Like, why do you think all the news articles, it's like horrible stuff? Because like an article about like puppies being,
they like to stir the pot. So many articles I saw so many articles on Snapchat. Sometimes they'll send you stuff through there, and they were like, Hailey Bieber's pregnant. But during that time, she was not pregnant. People were just stirring the pot to cause controversy between her and Selena Gomez. Now Hailey Bieber's actually pregnant. And it's like, this is exactly why she didn't want to bring it to the media, because there's pot stirrers out there trying to cause an issue.
That's nuts. I assume that's Justin Bieber's wife?
Yes.
Okay.
I didn't know who that was either, so thanks.
You guys know Selena Gomez? You guys have to know.
Yeah, she's she's like a Disney Channel star, right?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. So she used to date Justin Bieber.
Okay. Mm-hmm. I did not know that.
I always get her and Ariana Grande mixed up. But
no, come on.
Disney Channel stars? I think they were.
Ariana was Nickelodeon.
Oh, sorry.
Mm-hmm. But anyways, back to the topic. Like, that's just to show that they like to stir the pot and have two sides to choose.
Yeah, drama. People love that drama.
Drama.
All right, last bullet from this article. Hybrid employees have more positive perceptions of their company's ethical culture than their fully in-office peers. They also observe misconduct at a lower rate and report their observations at a higher rate. Okay, that's interesting. So you observe at a lower rate, but report at a higher rate. I can't immediately reconcile the latter part of that. But I guess it makes sense. If you're a hybrid, you're not going to be exposed to bad things going on. That's not really newsworthy.
Yeah, it's like if 100 events happen that could be considered it, but you only see 50 or 5 of them or 50 of them, you're going to report less. And I think that it's probably the reporting more is that like it has to be particularly egregious maybe for them to like notice it, so that they report it at a higher rate. Maybe that's how I read that.
Wait, so
if you're just in the office and you're like seeing everything, you're like, all right, well, I saw someone do this unethical thing 10 times. I'm not going to report it. Whereas if at home you see like 2 of them, you're like, oh, that's especially bad for me to have noticed it or seen it. So I'm going to report those 2.
I think you're also just home. Maybe you don't think that like they're going to notice you that noticed it. I don't know.
You feel safer at home. You're like, what are they?
Yeah.
I don't know. So, all right. Peter, I have a list of things to talk about, including LinkedIn profile observations after reviewing and working with almost 100 people in the job market over the last week and a half.
Yeah.
But I don't want to get into that now because we don't have enough time. Do you have a LinkedIn lunatic of the week to share before we move on?
Well, the biggest one I saw was the guy talking about the Mother's Day, but there was one who's getting blasted on. Is the biggest one of the week. Basically, this woman talking about how great working remote was and how she had worked all over the world and she'd done all these cool things, but that she decided it was time to like make everybody start going back into in-person meetings, and she didn't really like explain a very good reason for it. She basically was like went into this whole thing about how great remote work was for her and she had done all these cool things, but that she was like, now it's time for me to start making people go into the office. And everyone was like, okay, but what, you literally just wrote this whole thing about how great it was. And she's doing it just because like she said it was good for people, but like kind of in a generic way, that they would start having these like in-person meetings, and they were going to go from remote work to flex work, I think is what she called it. And she left it like an addendum at the end, was like, this is a change isn't going to affect everyone. So of course everyone in the comments is like, I think, what a surprise, the upper leadership is probably not going to be affected by this. It'll be like the random low level people.
Ashley and I, it came up right before, Peter, I think you jumped on with us that, and before we were recording that seems like old news in a way. I think it's far from old news. I think we're going to continue to see that. I had a call earlier today with a peer, who's a staffing company owner, and she was expressing that they've seen a big drop in just collaboration and productivity and results since being remote. And there's, I think, everyone likes to argue, who wants to be remote, that employees are just as productive and you don't lose anything. I can't make that argument. I'm even though we are remote and with no plans to change it, you do lose a lot.
The struggle that everybody has is like the stuff that people argue for against, like, oh, collaborations, those are intangible and they're not easily measured. So people are like, it's bad because of, I feel like it's bad, and no one can give like, if there was results that were like, this company has X, Y, and Z statistics that can be backed up and prove that like they are worse off than they were when they were 100% in person, that'd be hard to refute. But it feels like it's a lot of this, just like.
Well, let me give you. Sorry, actually, but I want to give a firsthand example that I think of a lot with this. When we were smaller, we were in an office where I could hear a lot of conversations. The recruiters sitting right outside my door, and 10 times a day I would run out and help someone with the conversation. When you're in recruiting, you can tell once your radar for this or whatever you want to call it is finely tuned. I could hear less than 30 seconds of a conversation that a recruiter is having, one side of a conversation, and I can tell if there's a problem. You could just tell it's tone. It's just, you can see it coming a mile away. And so I would run over and stand with the recruiter and give them advice and input. That's how they learned. That's how they got better. And so now new recruiters, they're isolated. They're working at home. Sure, there's technology where you can listen on a phone call. No one does. I mean, that's just so impractical to try to do that consistently. And I think about examples like that. And that's just one of many all the time where I think, well, how is that learning going to take place? There's no substitute for being there in the moment, for hearing it live. You can't recreate that stuff. So that, that you said it's intangible. Yeah, you can't measure that, but it's very real. I don't need someone else to confirm that it's real. I know it's real.
Yeah, I agree that there are situations like that. I think that the other thing that you can look at though is, all right, so that's a good, but what about say you got to write a bunch of articles or something. You're sitting in an office. People can just constantly be bugging you, walking in and stuff. Whereas if you're at home, you can actually physically shut them off and actually get more. And I think that's where if you're in a space where you're just producing something or you need to be left alone, working remote works great. Yes, if you're in a social situation or you need to particularly people learning. Yeah, I'll concede that that's definitely better for the in-person. That's why I think hybrid is probably the best, you know.
Well, I had a friend that she worked for a really big company, and they just announced that they're gonna be hybrid. And now she's like, "I have to go into the office, like, 3 days a week," and now she's trying to look for a completely remote job because she likes to travel. But she was telling me, like, there's less and less remote jobs out
Yep.
there.
Yep.
So
Bigger,
it's
bigger,
going
bigger
away.
candidate pool. You guys saw Brian's comments. We need to bigger candidate pool, fewer opportunities. That's shrinking. I don't think it's growing. I think anyone who's this is a blanket statement that's not 100% accurate, obviously, but I think there's very few companies who haven't yet been fully remote who will make that decision now. I think the opposite will happen. Companies that were remote are going back, like Peter's example he just gave. I saw that post too, and the hate that person was receiving on Reddit. I'm not surprised because of where it was. I mean, it was on Reddit and in a subreddit where they're inclined to make fun of people. But I'm like, what? She has a valid point.
I actually read it and I was like, for as people being as angry as they were, I was like, it wasn't. I've seen way worse ones on there. So and she didn't even say that they were going back in the office 100. She was like, I just want people to take meetings.
I mean, it's it's anger because you're taking away something that someone wants. And whether it's good for them or not is different. Whether it's good for the company or not is not. No one really cares, right? If you're being told, hey, you have to go back to in the office where you used to be at home, the justification for it is almost irrelevant, right? To you as the individual. I could go, hey, here's 10 reasons, and your reason not to do it is, quote, I don't want to, right? Yeah. I mean, that's.
I think it's like the biggest thing is if where people live, I guess people care. Like I'm probably like the worst person to be working with because I don't take advantage. I should be working like from Europe or something, or I've yet to work remotely from a place that is not my house. So I'm like the first example is I remember back years ago I was talking to this guy who was a developer and he took a pay cut to work remote. This is before it was like a huge thing. And he was like, oh yeah, I'm going to Denver this week to stay with my friend. I'm going to be working from Denver for like a week. I'm like, that's so cool. And you have yet to go work from Denver.
I think you guys are nuts for that, not taking advantage of it. Like I think about it all the time when, when you have kids, as I do, you can't do that. It's not practical. But when my youngest is out of the house in 2 years, as depressing as that sounds to say out loud, my plan is to absolutely take advantage of that and live in different places.
I'm going to try and do it. I'm going to make a commitment to try and, I don't know, go somewhere.
You should before you have kids.
Well, I got to see my wife just graduated nursing school, so she can be a travel nurse somewhere.
Travel nurse. Perfect.
They make good money.
Convince her to do that. Yeah.
I encourage you. Go blaze new trails. All right, you guys. I think we're gonna hold off talking about anything more until next week because this list
we got a backlog of things to go over.
Huh?
We got a backlog of things to go over, so yeah, we'll save it.
We do. All right. Well, thank you. See you next week, next Thursday. Are we good for next Thursday?
Next Thursday,
possibly.
All right. Stay tuned.
See you guys.
Bye for now.
Bye.